I was holding my breath, standing at the back of the most beautiful wedding reception I had ever seen in my life, when someone shouted those words that would change everything forever. "Get out of here, you fat elephant. What are you even doing?" Here, the champagne flute in my trembling hand nearly slipped as every single person in that elegant ballroom turned to stare at me. Mine Serafina, de la Croix Montenegro. The poor girl from Belchassi, who had absolutely no business being at Evangeline Thibodeau's wedding, to the most eligible bachelor in all of Louisiana. But let me start from the beginning, because this story needs to be told right. If you've ever felt like you didn't belong somewhere, if you've ever been laughed at for dreaming too big, then maybe you'll understand why this story matters so much. 3 days before that wedding, I was in my little flower shop on the wrong side of Belchassi, arranging white roses and baby's breath for Mrs. Boudreau's anniversary dinner. The shop smelled like jasmine and magnolias, mixed with the faint scent of vanilla candles my grandmother Celeste always kept burning. It was a Tuesday morning, and the Louisiana humidity was already making my dress stick to my skin. That's when my cousin Evangeline walked through my door like she owned the place. Evangeline Thibodeau was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was. Short, thin where I was. Well, let's just say I'd been fighting my weight my entire life. She had blonde hair that caught sunlight like spun gold, and she moved through the world like she was floating on air. Her daddy owned half the sugarcane plantations in the parish, and she'd never wanted for anything. "Serafina," she said, looking around my shop like she was inspecting something contaminated. "I need to talk to you." I was used to visits. Usually she came when she needed something from me. Free flowers for her garden parties, my grandmother's old French recipes, or just someone to remind her how much better her life was than mine. "What can I do for you, Evangeline?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. She pulled out an invitation. Thick, cream-colored paper with gold embossing. "I'm getting married." Everyone in Belchassi knew Evangeline was marrying Maximilien Beaumont, Ashworth III, heir to one of the oldest and wealthiest families in Louisiana. "Congratulations," I said, meaning it despite everything between us. "I'm happy for you." She laughed without warmth. "I'm not here for your blessing. I need flowers." My heart jumped. A wedding like hers would be huge business for my little shop. "I'd love to do your wedding flowers," I said, already calculating costs and designs. "Oh no," Evangeline said dismissively. "We're using Delacroix florals in New Orleans, the real florists. I need you to make my bouquet." The name stung. Delacroix florals used to be our family business, started by my great-great-grandfather. But when my parents died in that car accident 7 years ago, we lost everything. Grandmere Celeste and I were left with nothing but this tiny shop and dreams of rebuilding. Your bouquet? Family tradition. Grandmama Odette always said Delacroix women should carry flowers arranged by family on their wedding day. For luck, of course. I'd be honored. Good white roses, baby's breath, tiny pearls, woven through. Nothing too fancy. Have it ready by Saturday. What about payment? Evangeline's smile was sharp. This is family. You wouldn't charge family, would you? There it was. The trap I'd walked into 1,000 times. She wanted me to spend 3 days creating what would be a $500 bouquet for free. Because we were family. Because I was supposed to be grateful. But I was tired. Tired of being treated like I didn't matter. Tired of being the poor cousin grateful for scraps. "I'd be happy to make your bouquet," I said, free of charge. "Because you're right, we're family." As I watched her leave, I made a decision. I was going to make her the most beautiful bouquet she'd ever seen. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to be proud of my work. Have you ever made a decision that seemed small, but changed your entire life? That's what I did when I decided to attend Evangeline's wedding. The next 3 days passed. In a blur, I worked from dawn until midnight, crafting what I knew was the most beautiful bouquet I'd ever created. Each rose was perfect, each pearl placed with precision. Grandmère Céleste helped me, her arthritic fingers still nimble. "This is beautiful, ma chérie," she said in her soft French accent. "She will be lucky to carry this." "I hope she likes it," I said, though part of me didn't care. I was creating this for me, to prove I was just as talented as any fancy florist. "You are gifted," Grandmère Céleste said, kissing my forehead. "Never forget that." Saturday arrived with typical Louisiana timidity. I dressed in my best outfitter, black dress I'd altered to be more flattering, paired with my only dress shoes. I spent an hour on makeup, using techniques learned from YouTube videos. The Beauregard mansion sat on 50 acres of manicured grounds. As I drove up the oak-lined driveway in my ancient Honda Civic, my stomach clenched with nervousness. The mansion was like something from a movie. White columns, wraparound porches, fairy tale gardens. Cars were arriving. Bentleys, Mercedes, BMWs, worth more than I'd make in 5 years. I parked near the back, hoping my rusty car wouldn't be too obvious. The bouquet sat secured in a special box on my passenger seat. I'd wrapped it carefully, placed it in ice to keep it fresh. It really was beautiful, probably the best work I'd ever done. I made my way to the bridal suite. The hallways were filled with wedding party members, photographers, caterers carrying silver trays. Everyone looked like they belonged except me. "Excuse me," I said to a woman in an expensive suit. "I'm looking for Evangeline Thibodeau's bridal suite. I have her bouquet." The woman looked me up and down with disdain. "Service entrance is around back." "I'm not. I'm family. Delivering the bouquet personally." She raised an eyebrow but pointed. "Down the hall, 3rd door on the right." The bridal suite was a flurry of activity. Bridesmaids in pale pink, hairstylists, makeup artists, photographers. And in the center, Evangeline, radiant in a dress that probably cost more than my yearly income. "Serafina," she called. "Do you have my bouquet?" Every head turned. I felt like a spotlight highlighted every flaw, every sign I didn't belong in. This world of designer dresses and professional beauty teams. "Yes," I said, opening the box. "I think you'll love it." I lifted the bouquet out, and I heard actual gasps. It was stunning, more beautiful than I'd imagined. The white roses seemed to glow against the baby's breath, pearls catching light like tiny stars. "Oh my God," one bridesmaid whispered. "That's gorgeous." Even Evangeline seemed speechless. She took the bouquet, and for a moment I saw something that might have been genuine appreciation. "It's perfect," she said. I felt warmth spread through my chest. This was why I loved what I did. This moment when someone saw my work and recognized the love and skill that went into it. "Where did you get this made?" the photographer asked, already snapping pictures. Before I could answer, Evangeline spoke. "Oh, it's just something I picked up. Nothing special." The words hit like a slap. Nothing special. After 3 days of painstaking work, after pouring my heart into creating something beautiful for her, I was nothing special. "Actually," said one bridesmaid, "didn't you say your fat cousin made it for free?" The room went silent. I felt my face. Flush hot, my fat cousin. That's how Evangeline talked about me to her friends. "Well," Evangeline said with glass-breaking laughter, "I suppose family has to be good for something, right?" The room erupted in laughter. Not mean laughter exactly, but the kind of casual cruelty wealthy people specialize in. The kind that cuts deep because it's delivered so carelessly. I stood there feeling smaller with each passing moment. These women saw me as entertainment, a curiosity, the pathetic poor cousin who made flowers for free. "I should go," I managed. "Oh, don't leave yet." Evangeline said with false sweetness. "Why don't you stay for the ceremony? I'm sure there's somewhere in the back you can sit." More laughter. They were laughing at the idea of me attending the wedding. I mumbled something about other deliveries and practically ran out. But instead of leaving, instead of going home to Grandmere Celis and our simple life, I made another decision that would change everything. I decided to stay. Maybe it was pride, maybe curiosity, maybe just stubborn determination not to let them drive me away. But I found myself walking toward the main house, where elegant guests were making their way to the ceremony. The ceremony was in the mansion's garden, under ancient oak trees draped with Spanish moss, white chairs in perfect rows, an altar with more flowers than I'd ever seen in one place, professional arrangements from Delacroix Florals in New Orleans. I found a spot at the very back, behind business associates. I tried to make myself invisible, in my simple black dress among designer gowns and expensive suits. I might as well have been a shadow. When the music started and Evangeline began her walk down the aisle, I held my breath. She really was beautiful, glowing with happiness, carrying my bouquet like it was made of spun gold. For a moment, I forgot the humiliation and felt genuinely happy for her. And then I saw him. The groom was standing with his back to the guests. But when Evangeline reached the halfway point, he turned to watch her approach. That's when I got my first look at Maximilian Beaumont Ashworth III. If you've ever read romance novels, where the hero is described as devastatingly handsome, where the heroine's heart stops, where time freezes, I always thought that was just fiction. Pretty words designed to make lonely women feel better. I was wrong. Maximilian was tall, probably 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled out his perfectly tailored tuxedo. His hair was dark blonde, styled classically, but with just enough natural wave to make you want to run your fingers through it. But it was his eyes that stopped my heart. Even from the back of the garden, I could see they were the most striking. Blue-eyed ever encountered, like the ocean on a perfect summer day, like every blue thing poets had ever written about, more than his physical beauty. There was something about how he carried himself. Confident but not arrogant, elegant but not pretentious. When he smiled at Evangeline as she approached, it was genuine and warm. And I felt something twist in my chest that I didn't want to examine. The ceremony was beautiful, traditional Catholic. Vows, a string quartet, readings about love that made my eyes water despite myself. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, and Maximilian kissed Evangeline, the crowd erupted in applause, and I found myself clapping along, caught up in the romance. As the new couple walked back down the aisle, Maximilian's eyes swept across the crowd, acknowledging friends and family. For a split second, his gaze landed on me. Our eyes met across 50 rows of wedding guests, across a divide of social class that might as well have been the Grand Canyon. He didn't know who I was, had probably never seen me before. But in that moment, something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. Or just the kind of fleeting connection that sometimes happens between strangers. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then he was past me, following his new wife toward the mansion. But those 2 seconds left me shaken in a way I couldn't explain. The reception was even more elegant. The ballroom had been transformed into something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across tables draped in ivory silk. Professional flowers adorned every surface. A jazz band played while waiters in white gloves circulated with champagne and tiny works of art. Disguised as hors d'oeuvres, I shouldn't have gone in. I knew I didn't belong. But something drew me forward. Maybe the same foolish romanticism that made me read poetry and dream about love stories that would never happen to girls like me. I found a spot near the back, partially hidden behind a decorative column. From there, I could watch without drawing attention. The bride and groom had their first dance to At Last by Etta James. And even I had to admit, they looked perfect together. After the first dance, other couples joined them. Parents, grandparents, wedding party members. I watched families dancing together, friends laughing and celebrating, and felt that familiar ache of loneliness that had been my constant companion since my parents died. That's when the bouquet toss was announced. All the single ladies gather round. The band leader called. Time for the bride to share some of that wedding luck. Single women began making their way to the center of the dance floor. Giggling bridesmaids, teenage cousins, elderly aunts who played along good-naturedly. I stayed where I was, of course. The bouquet toss wasn't for girls like me. It was for girls who believed they had a chance at catching that kind of happiness. But as I watched Evangeline prepare to throw my bouquet, the most beautiful arrangement I'd ever created, something came over me. Maybe it was the champagne I'd sipped from an abandoned glass. Maybe it was the romantic atmosphere. Maybe it was just 7 years of grief and loneliness finally demanding their due. Whatever it was, I found myself moving toward the group of women. Not pushing to the front, not being aggressive, just ... standing there, hoping, maybe, for just a moment, that the universe might throw me a small kindness. Evangeline turned her back to the crowd, raised the bouquet high, and tossed it over her shoulder. It was a perfect throw, high and straight, and I watched my creation arc through the air in slow motion. The other women reached up, laughing and jostling playfully, and somehow, impossibly, the bouquet came down right toward me. I reached up without thinking, my hands closing around the stems just as someone else's fingers brushed mine. For one impossible, magical moment, I was holding my own creation, feeling the smooth pearls and soft petals, breathing in the scent of roses I'd chosen so carefully. I'd caught the bouquet May. Serafina de Locra Montenegro, the fat poor girl, from the wrong side of Belchasset, had caught the bride's bouquet at the wedding of the year. The room went silent, not the good kind of silent, the bad kind, the kind that happens when something has gone horribly wrong. I looked around at the sea of faces staring at me, confusion, amusement, disgust. These people who had never seen me before were looking at me like I'd committed a crime. And then someone started laughing. It started with one person, then spread like wildfire. Not joyful laughter, cruel laughter, the kind that strips away your dignity and leaves you naked and vulnerable. Did you see that? Who is she? What is she even doing here? The voices blended into a chorus of judgment and cruelty. I clutched the bouquet tighter, as if it could protect me. And then Evangeline's voice cut through it all, sharp and clear and full of venom. Get out of here, you fat elephant. What are you even doing here? The room erupted. Laughter, whispers, pointing fingers. I felt like I was drowning in their judgment, suffocating under their disdain. Someone behind me whispered loudly, "That's Evangeline's cousin, the poor one." I heard she made the bouquet for free. More laughter, more whispers. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor, to wake up from this nightmare and find myself back in my little flower shop with Grandmere Cellist. I started backing toward the door, still clutching the bouquet, tears streaming down my face. But in my haste to escape, I tripped over someone's dress train. I stumbled, lost my balance, and went down hard on the marble floor. The bouquet flew out of my hands, scattering roses and baby's breath, and carefully placed pearls across the elegant ballroom floor. My beautiful creation, the thing I poured my heart into, was destroyed in an instant. The laughter got louder. I was on my hands and knees, on cold marble, in my funeral dress and thrift store shoes, surrounded by the wreckage of my own work, while 100 wealthy strangers laughed at my humiliation. It was the lowest moment of my entire life. And then a hand appeared in my line of vision. A strong, elegant hand extended down toward me. I looked up, tears blurring my vision, and found myself staring into those incredible blue eyes I'd noticed during the ceremony. Maximilian Beaumont, Ashworth III, the groom, the man who'd just married my cousin, was offering to help me up from the floor where I'd fallen. His face was serious, concerned, completely different from the laughing faces surrounding us. "Let me help you," he said, and his voice was warm and kind and completely at odds with everything else happening in that room. The laughter died away as people realized what was happening. The groom was helping the embarrassing poor cousin. The prince was extending his hand to the peasant. It was like a scene from a fairy tale, except this was real life. And fairy tales didn't happen to girls like me. But in that moment, looking up into his eyes, feeling his strong hand close around mine as he helped me to my feet, I forgot about everything else. I forgot about the laughter, the humiliation, the scattered flowers, the 100 reasons why this moment couldn't be real. For just a few seconds, it was just the two of us in that ballroom. Just him and me and the electricity that sparked between our joined hands. "Thank you," I whispered, and he smiled, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Something that felt dangerously like hope, but then reality crashed back in. The whispers started again, louder now. Evangeline's voice cut through the crowd. "Maximilian, what are you doing? Don't touch her." I jerked my hand away from his like I'd been burned. What was I thinking? This was his wedding day. He'd just married my cousin. I was making everything worse by being here, by existing, by daring to believe that someone like him might show kindness to someone like me. "I'm sorry," I said, backing away from him. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't. I need to go." And I ran. I ran through that elegant ballroom, past the laughing guests and the scattered remnants of my bouquet, past the string quartet and crystal chandelier, and all the beautiful things that would never belong to me. I ran through the mansion's hallways, past oil paintings of long-dead Ashworth ancestors who seemed to stare down with disapproval. I ran out into the humid Louisiana night, gulping air that tasted like magnolias and shame. My car was still parked, where I'd left it, looking small and shabby among the luxury vehicles. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the door open. Behind me, I could hear music and laughter spilling out of the mansion. The party was continuing, without me, as if nothing had happened, as if I'd never been there at all. But as I finally got my car started and pulled away from the Beauregard mansion, heading back toward Bellechasse and the only life I'd ever known, I couldn't stop thinking about those blue eyes, about the way Maximilian had looked at me, not with pity or amusement, but with something that almost looked like understanding. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was just a moment of kindness from a decent man who'd been raised to help people in distress, that it meant nothing, could never mean anything, would never happen again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, that the girl who'd walked into that mansion was not the same as the one driving away from it. 3 days later, I was in my flower shop, trying to lose myself in work, when I heard the little bell above my front door chime. "I'll be right with you," I called out, not looking up from the white lilies I was trimming. "Take your time." The voice stopped me cold. Deep, warm, cultured, familiar. A voice that had been haunting my dreams for 3 nights straight. I dropped the lily stem and slowly turned around. There, standing in my tiny flower shop, like he'd materialized from my most impossible daydream, was Maximilian Beaumont Ashworth III. He looked different than at the wedding. Gone was the formal tuxedo, replaced by dark jeans and a simple white button-down with sleeves rolled up. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd run his fingers through it, and there was something almost nervous about the way he was standing there, hands in his pockets, looking around my little shop like he was trying to memorize every detail. "Mr. Ashworth," I managed to say, my voice barely more than a whisper, "what are you doing here?" He smiled. The same warm, genuine smile I remembered from that moment on the ballroom floor. "I was hoping to buy some flowers." I stared at him, completely unable to process what was happening. This man, who had just married my cousin 3 days ago, who should have been on his honeymoon somewhere tropical and exclusive, was standing in my flower shop asking to buy flowers. "Flowers?" I repeated stupidly. "Yes, I heard you're very talented." The way he said it, with such sincerity, made my chest tight. After years of being dismissed and overlooked, having someone acknowledge my work felt like a small miracle. "Yes, what kind of arrangement are you looking for?" He walked closer to the counter, and I caught a hint of his cologne. Something expensive and subtle, like cedar and sea salt. "Actually, I was thinking of buying all of them." "All of what?" "All of your flowers, everything in the shop." I laughed, because surely he had to be joking. "Mr. Ashworth, I think there's been some misunderstanding. I have probably $3,000 worth of inventory here." "Perfect." He pulled out his wallet and laid $500 bills on my counter. "Will this cover it?" I stared at the money like it might bite me. $2,500, more than I usually made in 2 months. "I don't understand. What could you possibly need with all of these flowers?" "I'm redecorating," he said, and there was something in his eyes that told me there was more to this story. "My wife and I are going on our honeymoon next week, and I want to surprise her with fresh arrangements throughout the house when we return. I was hoping you might be available to do the work." "My wife?" The words hit me like ice water. Of course he was here about Evangeline, about making his new bride happy. I was an idiot for thinking this visit might be about something else. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice professional. "What kind of arrangements does Evangeline prefer?" Something flickered across his face when I said her name. "Actually, I was hoping you might have some suggestions. You clearly have excellent taste." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "Thank you. Where are you going for your honeymoon?" "The Maldives. 2 weeks in an overwater bungalow." The Maldives. I'd seen pictures in magazines, pristine white beaches and impossibly blue water. The kind of place that existed in my dreams but would never be part of my reality. "That sounds wonderful," I said, and meant it. "Yes, it should be," he said, but there was something flat in his voice, like he was reading from a script he didn't quite believe. "Well, for tropical arrangements, I'd suggest something bright and vibrant. Bird of paradise, maybe some anthurium, definitely some orchids. I could create something that brings the feeling of the islands into your home." As I talked about flowers, describing color palettes and arrangement styles, I noticed that Maximilian was watching me intently, not just listening to what I was saying, but really watching me. The way my hands moved as I gestured, the way my face lit up when I talked about my work, the way I unconsciously touched the petals of nearby flowers as I spoke. "You really love this," he said quietly. "I do. Flowers have their own language, their own way of telling stories. Every arrangement is like writing a poem, except instead of words, you're using color and texture and scent." "That's beautiful. How did you get started?" And just like that, I found myself telling him about my grandfather, about learning at his side in the old Delacroix floral shop, about the accident that changed everything, about rebuilding from nothing with Grandmere Celeste. He listened without interrupting, asking thoughtful questions, seeming genuinely interested in my story. Have you ever had someone really listen to you? Not just wait for their turn to talk, but actually pay attention to what you're saying, like, it matters. It was intoxicating, being the focus of his attention like that. "I'm sorry about your parents," he said when I finished. "That must have been incredibly difficult." "Thank you, it was. But Grandmere Celeste and I, we take care of each other. And this shop, it's small, but it's ours. Family is important, he said, and there was something wistful in his voice. Sometimes I think it's the only thing that really matters. Don't you have family support? I mean, the Ashworths are one of the most prominent families in Louisiana. He was quiet for a long moment, running his finger along the edge of my counter. Prominent, yes. Supportive, ... That's more complicated. Before I could ask what he meant, the bell above the door chimed again. Mrs. Boudreau bustled in, took one look at Maximilian, and nearly dropped her purse. Oh my heavens, you're Maximilian Ashworth. I was at your wedding. Such a lovely ceremony. Dear, thank you, Mrs. Boudreau, he said graciously, shifting effortlessly into what I was beginning to recognize as his public persona. Charming, polite, perfectly appropriate. Are you here ordering flowers for your new bride? How romantic. Something like that, he said, glancing at me. Miss Montenegro here is going to help me with some arrangements. Miss Montenegro, not Serafina, not honey or sweetheart like the older customers sometimes called me. Miss Montenegro. Formal and proper and appropriate. Mrs. Boudreau collected her arrangements and left, but not before whispering loudly enough for both of us to hear. Such a gentleman. Your cousin certainly landed herself a prize, Serafina. When the door closed behind her, the silence felt thick and heavy. Maximilian was looking at me again, but differently now, like he was trying to figure something out. Your cousin, he said finally. Evangeline. Yes. You made her bouquet. It wasn't a question. Yes. It was the most beautiful bouquet I've ever seen. The compliment made my heart skip, but it also made everything more complicated. Thank you. She looked lovely carrying it. She did. Another pause. But I have to ask, ... Why were you at the wedding? I got the impression from Evangeline that you two weren't particularly close. I felt my face burn with shame as I remembered that horrible moment on the ballroom floor. I delivered the bouquet and I thought maybe I could stay for the ceremony. I know I didn't belong there. You had every right to be there. Your family? Not the kind of family that gets invited to Ashworth weddings, I said, trying to make it sound like a joke but failing. He stepped closer to the counter, close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. What happened at the reception was unacceptable. No one should have treated you that way. It's fine, I said quickly. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be used to it. The intensity in his voice surprised me. He sounded genuinely angry on my behalf, which was more than most people had ever been.